The article that didn't exist. Marcus Hale had been a journalist for nearly 15 years. In that time, he had seen almost everything. Political scandals, crime scenes, natural disasters, but nothing in his career had prepared him for what he saw that morning. It started like any other day. The newsroom was quiet except for the constant tapping of keyboards and the hum of fluorescent lights above. Marcus sat at his desk, sipping his now lukewarm coffee as he opened his laptop. Outside the tall windows of the building, the city was just beginning to wake. Traffic moved slowly through the early morning streets. Delivery trucks stopped at corner stores. People hurried along sidewalks with tired faces and steaming cups of coffee. Marcus logged into the newsroom system and checked his emails. Most of them were routine. Press releases, interview requests, police reports, but one email stood out. It had no sender and no subject, just an attachment. Marcus frowned. Strange, he muttered. He hovered his cursor over the attachment. The file name read dot. Front page _tomorrow.pdf. Marcus leaned back slightly. Tomorrow? That didn't make any sense. He clicked it anyway. The document opened slowly, and when it did, Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. It was a newspaper. Not just any newspaper. It was their newspaper. The Daily Chronicle. Marcus knew the layout by heart. The headline font. The columns spacing. Even the small logo in the top corner. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The date at the top of the page read Thursday, October 12th. Marcus looked at the clock on his computer. It was Wednesday. He leaned closer to the screen. Okay, that's weird. Maybe someone had accidentally scheduled tomorrow's layout early. It happened sometimes. Editors prepared the front page in advance. But when Marcus read the headline, his stomach tightened. City bridge collapses. 27 dead. Marcus blinked. What? The bridge mentioned in the article was the Riverside Bridge. One of the busiest bridges in the city. Marcus read the article quickly. According to the report, the collapse would happen tomorrow afternoon at 3:18 p.m. Marcus leaned back slowly. That's impossible. The bridge hadn't collapsed. He had driven across it just yesterday. Marcus rubbed his temples. This has to be some kind of test layout. He scrolled further down the page. There was even a photograph. The bridge completely destroyed. Steel beams twisted. Cars crushed beneath concrete. Emergency lights flashing in the distance. Marcus felt a chill crawl up his spine. The image looked disturbingly real. Too real. He checked the date again. October 12th. Tomorrow. Marcus stood up from his desk. Across the room, his editor, Rachel Grant, was speaking with another reporter. Marcus walked over. Rachel, he said. She glanced up. Morning, Marcus. You working on tomorrow's front page already? Rachel looked confused. What do you mean? Marcus opened the file on his tablet and showed it to her. Rachel stared at the screen. Her expression slowly changed. Where did you get this? It came in an email. Rachel frowned. This isn't our layout. Marcus blinked. Yes, it is. Rachel shook her head. No, it's not. Marcus pointed at the logo. That's our logo. Rachel looked closer. Her face went pale. Marcus. What? That article. She pointed to the headline. What doesn't exist? Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What do you mean? Rachel turned her computer screen toward him. The newsroom system displayed tomorrow's front-page draft. It was completely different. No bridge collapse. No disaster. Just a story about city council funding. Marcus slowly looked back at the email. Then where did this come from? Rachel shook her head. I have no idea. Marcus felt uneasy now. Maybe someone is messing with us. Rachel crossed her arms. That photo looks real. Marcus nodded slowly. Too real. Rachel leaned closer. What time does it say the collapse happens? Marcus looked again. 3:18 p.m. tomorrow. Rachel exhaled. Well, Marcus raised an eyebrow. Well, what? Rachel gave a nervous smile. I guess we'll find out. Marcus returned to his desk. But he couldn't stop thinking about the article. Something about it felt wrong. Not just strange. Wrong. The kind of wrong that sat in the back of your mind like a whisper. Marcus closed the file and tried to focus on his work. But about 20 minutes later, another email arrived. No sender, no subject, just an attachment. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart beating slightly faster now. The file name read dot. Front page _tomorrow _update.pdf. Marcus hesitated. Then he opened it, and when he did, his blood ran cold. The same front page appeared, same headline, same bridge collapse, but this time, there was something new. A second headline, smaller. Beneath the first, Marcus leaned closer to the screen and read the words that made his hands begin to shake. Local journalist found dead in newsroom. Marcus froze. The article listed the victim's name, Marcus Hale. The headline about his death. Marcus stared at the screen. For a moment, his brain refused to process what he was seeing. The words were there. Clear. Unmistakable. Local journalist found dead in newsroom. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. His eyes moved slowly down the article. He read the name again. Marcus Hale. A cold wave ran through his chest. No, he whispered. This had to be a joke. Some kind of twisted prank? He leaned closer to the screen, reading every word. The article described the discovery of a journalist found dead late Thursday night inside the Daily Chronicle building. The victim was identified as Marcus Hale, 38. Marcus swallowed. That was his age. The article continued. Authorities say the cause of death is currently unknown. Investigators believe Hale had been working late when the incident occurred. Marcus felt his fingers trembling. Working late. That was normal for him. Journalists stayed late all the time. But then he read the final line of the article, and his blood turned cold. Sources say Hale had recently been investigating a mysterious series of emails connected to an unknown sender. Marcus slowly leaned back in his chair. His eyes darted around the newsroom. Everything looked normal. People typing, phones ringing, coffee machines humming in the corner. No one else seemed to notice anything strange. Marcus whispered to himself, "This isn't real." He closed the file. His hands were shaking now, but curiosity pulled at him again. He reopened it. The article was still there. His death, printed like a normal news story. Marcus stood up suddenly. Across the room, Rachel was still working at her desk. He walked over quickly. "Rachel." She looked up. "What's wrong?" Marcus showed her the screen. "Look at this." Rachel frowned. "What am I looking at?" "The second headline." Rachel leaned closer. Her expression slowly shifted from confusion to concern. Marcus. What? This article, she pointed at the screen, is about you. Marcus nodded slowly. I noticed. Rachel read it carefully. Her face went pale. This is sick, Marcus exhaled. You didn't write this? Rachel looked offended. Of course not. Marcus rubbed his forehead. Someone is messing with me. Rachel shook her head. This doesn't look like a prank. Marcus looked at her. Why not? Rachel pointed at the screen. This article references the first one. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Rachel pointed to the earlier headline. City bridge collapses. 27 dead. It says you were investigating the emails connected to this story. Marcus looked back at the screen. She was right. His death article mentioned the bridge collapse. Marcus whispered, but that hasn't happened yet. Rachel folded her arms. Exactly. Marcus felt his stomach twist. What if... Rachel raised an eyebrow. What if what? Marcus hesitated. Then he said the thought that had been forming in his mind. What if this is tomorrow's news? Rachel stared at him. You mean like a prediction? Marcus nodded. Rachel shook her head. That's impossible. Marcus glanced back at the screen. Maybe. Rachel crossed her arms. Marcus, people can't see the future. Marcus wasn't so sure anymore. He looked again at the bridge collapse headline. Everything about the article felt real. Specific details. Exact time. Exact location. Marcus suddenly grabbed his jacket. Rachel frowned. Where are you going? Marcus answered quickly. To the bridge. Rachel blinked. Why? Marcus grabbed his car keys. If this thing is predicting tomorrow's news, Rachel interrupted him. You're going to stop it? Marcus shook his head. No. Rachel frowned. Then why go? Marcus looked back at the screen. To see if it's telling the truth. 30 minutes later, Marcus was standing on the Riverside Bridge. Cars rushed past him. The structure looked completely normal. Steel beams, concrete supports. Traffic lights blinking in the distance. Marcus leaned over the railing. The river below moved quietly. Nothing looked wrong. Nothing looked like it was about to collapse. Marcus checked his phone. The article said the collapse would happen tomorrow at 3:18 p.m., almost 24 hours away. Marcus exhaled slowly. Maybe it really is just a prank. But something still bothered him. That photo, the image of the destroyed bridge, had looked so real. Marcus pulled out his phone again. He opened the email attachment once more. The same article appeared, but as he stared at it, something changed. Marcus frowned. The article had updated. His heart skipped. The number of deaths had changed. Earlier it said 27 dead. Now it said 28 dead. Marcus stared at the screen. What? His eyes moved down the article, and then he noticed something even stranger. A new line had appeared. Witnesses say a man was seen standing alone on the bridge hours before the collapse. Marcus felt a chill crawl up his spine. The article continued. Authorities are attempting to identify the individual. Marcus slowly looked up from his phone. Cars rushed past him. People drove by without noticing him. But Marcus suddenly felt like he was being watched. He whispered softly, This story is updating, as if it was happening in real time. Marcus looked down at the article again. Then his phone vibrated. Another email. No sender. No subject. Just a new attachment? Marcus hesitated, his heart beating faster. The file name read, front page _tomorrow_final.pdf. Marcus opened it, and what he saw made his hands go completely numb. The bridge collapse headline was still there, but the second headline had changed. The article about his death had been updated. Marcus read the new lines slowly. Journalist Marcus Hale was last seen standing on Riverside Bridge the day before the disaster. Marcus's breathing became shallow. The article ended with one final sentence. A sentence that made Marcus feel like the world had suddenly shifted beneath him. Authorities believe Hale knew the bridge was going to collapse. Marcus looked around the bridge again. Cars rushing past. People unaware of anything strange. But now, Marcus understood something terrifying. If the article was right, then tomorrow, the bridge really would collapse. And if that happened, his story would come true, including the part where he dies. The journalist who read tomorrow's news a day too early. The day before the disaster. Marcus stood in the middle of the Riverside Bridge long after the traffic had thinned. The wind coming off the river was cold, but he barely noticed. His eyes were locked on his phone. The article still stared back at him. City bridge collapses, 28 dead. And beneath it, the line that now mentioned him. Marcus felt a knot tightening in his chest. If this was some elaborate hoax, it was going too far. But if it wasn't, then tomorrow afternoon at 3:18 p.m., dozens of people were going to die. Marcus whispered under his breath, "No, that can't happen." He couldn't just walk away from this. He was a journalist. If a disaster was coming, and he had even the slightest chance to prevent it, he had to try. Marcus turned and walked quickly back to his car. 20 minutes later, he was back at the newsroom. Rachel looked up as he entered. "You're back already?" Marcus walked straight to her desk. The bridge. Rachel frowned. "What about it?" Marcus leaned closer. "The article is updating." Rachel stared at him. "What do you mean, updating?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her. "Look." Rachel scanned the screen. Her expression shifted immediately. "Marcus, the death count changed." Marcus nodded. It said 27 earlier. Rachel looked uneasy now. "And now it says 28. Marcus exhaled. "And there's more." He scrolled down. Rachel read the new lines slowly. "Witnesses say a man was seen standing alone on the bridge hours before the collapse." Rachel looked up at him. "That's you." Marcus nodded again. "And the article keeps changing." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "That's impossible." Marcus looked at her seriously. "I know." Rachel hesitated. "Marcus, what if this thing isn't predicting the future?" Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" Rachel crossed her arms. "What if it's creating it?" Marcus felt a chill crawl down his spine. "That doesn't make sense." Rachel shrugged. "Neither does a newspaper from tomorrow." Marcus rubbed his forehead. He hated the thought, but Rachel's words lingered in his mind. If the article was somehow influencing events, then everything he did might make things worse. Marcus suddenly stood up again. Rachel blinked. "Where are you going now?" Marcus grabbed his jacket. "To the police." Rachel frowned. You think they'll believe this? Marcus held up his phone. I don't know. But if I say nothing and that bridge collapses tomorrow, he paused. I'll never forgive myself. An hour later, Marcus sat across from a police officer in a small interview room. Detective Harris was a large man with tired eyes and a skeptical expression. Marcus placed his phone on the table. I know this sounds insane, Marcus said. Detective Harris sighed. Mr. Hale, you said you had information about a potential disaster. Marcus nodded. Yes. Harris leaned forward. Then explain. Marcus slid the phone across the table. Harris looked at the screen. His eyebrows slowly rose. You're saying this article came from the future? Marcus nodded again. Harris leaned back. You realize how that sounds? Marcus nodded. Trust me, I know. Harris studied the article. Where did you get this? Email. From who? I don't know. Harris frowned. No sender? Marcus shook his head. None. The detective stared at the article for a long moment. Then he said something Marcus didn't expect. This photo. Marcus leaned forward. What about it? Harris zoomed in on the image of the destroyed bridge. Marcus watched as the detective pointed to a small detail. Near the edge of the collapsed structure, there was a figure, barely visible in the background. Marcus squinted. It looked like someone standing near the wreckage. Harris turned the phone towards Marcus. That looks like a person. Marcus stared at the blurry figure. Something about it felt disturbingly familiar. Harris spoke quietly. That looks like you. Marcus felt the room suddenly feel smaller. What? Harris zoomed in further. The figure wore a dark jacket, the same type Marcus was wearing now. Marcus felt his heart pounding. That can't be. Harris leaned back again. Mr. Hale. Marcus looked up. Why are you at the scene of a disaster that hasn't happened yet? Marcus swallowed. I don't know. Harris studied him carefully. Then he stood up. I'll contact the city engineers. Marcus nodded quickly. Thank you. Harris opened the door to the room. But before Marcus could leave, his phone vibrated again. Marcus froze. Another email. He slowly opened it. The attachment read, front page _tomorrow _late update.pdf. Marcus opened the file, and the moment he saw the updated article, his face went pale, because the headline had changed again. City bridge collapse, 29 dead. Marcus's heart pounded. Another person had been added to the list, but that wasn't the worst part. Marcus scrolled down to the bottom of the article and read the new line that had appeared. Police began investigating the incident after journalist Marcus Hale reported the collapse the day before it happened. Marcus looked up slowly. Detective Harris was staring at him. For the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus realized something terrifying. The more he tried to stop the future, the more the newspaper kept rewriting it. And somehow, he was becoming part of the story. The journalist who read tomorrow's news a day too early. The story that writes itself. Marcus sat frozen in the police station chair. The glow of his phone illuminated his face. The headline still stared back at him. City bridge collapse, 29 dead. Marcus's chest tightened. He slowly looked up. Detective Harris was watching him carefully now. What changed? Harris asked. Marcus hesitated. Then he turned the screen toward him. Harris leaned closer. His expression hardened. The number increased. Marcus nodded. Someone else died. Harris frowned. But the bridge hasn't collapsed yet. Marcus rubbed his temples. I know. Harris stared at the article for another moment. Then he pointed to the bottom of the screen. What's this part? Marcus followed his finger. The new sentence still glowed on the screen. Police began investigating the incident after journalist Marcus Hale reported the collapse the day before it happened. Marcus exhaled slowly. It keeps updating? Harris looked at him. What do you mean? Marcus swallowed. Every time something changes, the article changes with it. Harris crossed his arms. You're telling me a newspaper from tomorrow is rewriting itself in real time? Marcus nodded. Yes. Harris sighed heavily. Mr. Hale, do you realize how insane that sounds? Marcus gave a tired laugh. Believe me, I know. But Harris didn't look convinced. He leaned forward again. Let's assume for a moment this article is real. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay. Harris tapped the screen. It says the collapse happens tomorrow at 3:18 p.m. Marcus nodded. That's right. Harris leaned back in his chair. So why would the death count increase today? Marcus thought about that. Then he whispered something that made his stomach twist. Because the story is still being written. Harris frowned. What? Marcus pointed to the screen. This isn't just tomorrow's newspaper. Harris stared at him. It's tomorrow's final newspaper. Marcus leaned forward. It's showing the story as it will appear after everything happens. Harris was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly, You're saying the future is already decided? Marcus looked down at the screen again. That's what it looks like. Harris rubbed his chin. But if the future is already written, Marcus finished the thought, then nothing I do will change it. The room fell quiet. Marcus suddenly stood up. I have to go. Harris frowned. Where? Marcus grabbed his phone. To the bridge. Harris shook his head. You've already been there. Marcus nodded. Yes, but now I know something I didn't know before. Harris crossed his arms. And what's that? Marcus looked him in the eye. The story isn't finished yet. 30 minutes later, Marcus was back at the Riverside Bridge. Night had fallen. Streetlights reflected across the dark river below. The bridge looked peaceful. Cars passed occasionally, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was waiting just beneath the surface. He walked slowly along the sidewalk, his phone still in his hand. The article remained unchanged. 29 dead, Marcus whispered to himself. There has to be a way to stop this. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Marcus froze. Another email. His heart pounded. He already knew what it would be. The attachment read, front page _tomorrow_revised.pdf. Marcus hesitated before opening it. Then he tapped the file. The article loaded slowly. Marcus's stomach twisted. The headline had changed again. City Bridge Collapse, 30 dead. Marcus felt his breath catch. Another death. But this time, the article included something new. A third headline had appeared beneath the others. Marcus leaned closer, his hands trembling, and read the words that made his blood run cold. Journalist seen on bridge hours before disaster. Marcus felt the wind grow colder around him. The article continued. Witnesses reported seeing Marcus Hale standing alone on Riverside Bridge the night before the collapse. Marcus looked around. The bridge was empty. No witnesses. No reporters. Just him, Marcus whispered quietly. This thing is documenting everything I do. Then he noticed something else. A new paragraph appeared beneath the article, as if the story was still being written. Marcus read it slowly. Authorities believe Hale attempted to stop the disaster. Marcus's chest tightened. He scrolled further down. One final line appeared, and when Marcus read it, his entire body went still. But Hale's actions may have caused the collapse to happen sooner. Marcus's heart began racing. What? He looked up at the massive steel structure around him. Cars were still crossing the bridge. Everything looked stable. But suddenly, Marcus heard a faint sound. A deep metallic groan. He turned slowly. One of the support beams along the bridge trembled slightly. Marcus's breath caught. The article said the collapse would happen tomorrow afternoon, but the words now echoed in his mind. Sooner. Marcus looked down at his phone again. The article had already begun updating. The time of the collapse was changing. The numbers on the screen shifted. 3:18 p.m., then 2:47 p.m., then 2:12 p.m. Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. No. The story wasn't just predicting the future. It was accelerating it. And somehow, Marcus's actions were making the disaster happen faster. The bridge groaned again, louder this time. Marcus slowly looked up and realized something horrifying. The disaster that was supposed to happen tomorrow might now happen tonight. The collapse begins. The sound came again, a deep metallic groan that echoed through the bridge like something enormous shifting beneath the steel. Marcus froze. Cars were still moving across the bridge, unaware. Headlights swept across the dark roadway. Engines hummed. Everything looked normal. But Marcus knew something was terribly wrong. His eyes dropped back to his phone. The article was still updating. The collapse time had changed again. 2:12 p.m. Then, suddenly, the numbers flickered. 11:43 p.m. Marcus felt his chest tighten. That's tonight. He looked up at the bridge structure above him. The massive steel beams seemed solid, unmovable. But the groaning sound came again. Longer this time. And louder. Marcus whispered to himself, "It's happening sooner." His phone buzzed again. Another update. Marcus stared at the screen. The death toll had increased. 31. Dead. Marcus felt panic rising. But it hasn't even happened yet. He scrolled down the article. New lines were appearing. Traffic remains heavy on Riverside Bridge late Wednesday night. Marcus looked around. The article was describing exactly what he was seeing right now. Cars. Trucks. A city bus passing slowly. Marcus's hands began shaking. This thing is writing the present. The article continued updating. Witnesses say the structure began making unusual noises shortly before the collapse. Marcus's breath caught. The bridge groaned again. Louder. People in nearby cars began noticing. A driver slowed down. Another rolled down their window. Marcus heard someone shout. "Did you hear that?" Marcus felt the world narrowing around him. His phone buzzed again. Another new line appeared. Authorities were not warned in time. Marcus stared at the words. "I tried to warn them." But the story didn't care. The article wasn't describing possibilities. It was describing outcomes. Marcus suddenly realized something terrifying. If the story was already written, then every moment he lived was simply catching up to it. Marcus turned and ran toward the center of the bridge. He waved his arms. "Stop!" Cars slowed slightly. Drivers looked confused. Marcus shouted louder. "Everyone get off the bridge!" The driver leaned out his window. "What are you talking about?" Marcus pointed behind them. "The bridge is going to collapse." Some drivers laughed. Others shook their heads, but a few began turning around. Marcus's phone vibrated again. He glanced down quickly. The article had updated. Panic began spreading among drivers after a journalist started shouting warnings. Marcus's heart pounded. "This thing is following everything I do." The bridge suddenly shook. Not violently, but enough for people to feel it. A woman screamed from a nearby car. Drivers slammed their brakes. More people began turning around. Marcus shouted again. "Get off the bridge now!" Another loud metallic crack echoed through the structure. This time, everyone heard it. Cars began reversing. Drivers abandoned their vehicles. People ran toward the exits. Marcus looked down at his phone again. The death toll had changed. 31 dead. Then suddenly, 30 dead. Marcus blinked. What? One number had disappeared. He realized something. Someone must have escaped. Marcus's chest filled with sudden hope. If people get off the bridge, the number goes down. But the article continued writing. Structural failure spreads across the central span. Marcus slowly looked up. The center of the bridge trembled. A large crack appeared along the concrete. Marcus whispered, "No." The bridge groaned violently. Cars tilted slightly as the road beneath them shifted. People screamed. Marcus looked down at his phone one last time. The article had updated again. But this time, the headline had changed completely. Marcus read the new words slowly. "Journalist saves dozens before bridge collapse." Marcus's heart stopped. What? He scrolled down. The story continued. Marcus Hale warned drivers moments before Riverside Bridge collapsed late Wednesday night. Marcus looked up. The crack in the bridge was growing. Fast. The article kept writing. Hale's warnings allowed many drivers to escape the disaster. Marcus's chest filled with relief. But then he reached the final line of the article, and his relief vanished instantly. The words appeared slowly on the screen. Hale was last seen standing on the bridge moments before it gave way. Marcus's hands began trembling again. No. He looked around. People were still running. Cars were abandoned everywhere. But Marcus realized something horrifying. He had run toward the center of the bridge, the exact place the collapse would start. Marcus whispered, "This story still ends with me dying." The bridge let out one final thunderous crack. The center of the roadway collapsed beneath his feet. Marcus felt the ground drop away. The night exploded with screams. Steel twisted. Concrete shattered. Marcus's phone slipped from his hand. As he fell into the darkness below, The screen flashed one final update. The final headline of tomorrow's newspaper. Bridge collapse hero dies saving dozens. And that was the story of the journalist who read tomorrow's news. A day too early. But the real question is this. If you discovered tomorrow's newspaper today, and it predicted your death, would you try to change the future today? Or would you accept what was already written? Tell me what you would do in the comments. And if you enjoyed dark mysteries, strange stories, and chilling truths, make sure to subscribe to ASHEN Truths. Because sometimes the truth hides in the shadows, and sometimes the future is already written.